So this week we're doing Daf Tazayin, and we're starting from the Mimer on Daf Tazvav Amadalid. So the Mimer is to understand this idea that we did Mimer before, which is the jumping on the mountains, on the hills, and leaping over the mountains, with a very good explanation. She says that we'll understand this, what it says by Egla Rufa. Egla Rufa is a mitzvah that if somebody's found dead in a field, that you measure to the closest city, and there they bring a special egla, a special calf that they kill, they butcher in a next to a brook. So it says that you arfu say that you have to kill it al nachal esan to a brook that's called esan. Generally means a place that can't grow anything. And the Gemara in the Mishnah says, what is nachal esan? A hard place that doesn't make any fruit. Nothing could grow there. So the Abisher said that it should come a place, something that doesn't make fruit, that which is a calf that hasn't had children yet, and then it should be killed there in a place that can't make fruit, and it should bring kapara, bring a forgiveness for one who was not allowed to bring fruit. So what does it mean, fruit? So if it means offspring, from the term perivarivya, so then what? For an old person and for someone who can't have children, you would not bring this calf. Rather, we do bring for those people also. So that means that what is Paris? Paris means one who is not allowed now to do mitzvahs. So we see here clearly that the Torah calls mitzvahs with the term Paris, fruit. So understand this example of fruit, that he compares mitzvahs to it. She says this is the idea of planting, that you plant a seed in the ground, and the seed gets decomposes, and then afterwards it grows from it a tree, and it makes its own fruit like the seed, like apples and such things. So the main growth comes from the power of growth that's in the land, in the earth, that comes from the utterance of Hashem, that he said, Tad she'haaretz desha, that the earth should bring forth sprouting, should bring forth growth, which this is a spiritual power, and it's able to give growth without any limit, without any end. And also the differences in taste between fruit that are sweet or ones that are more sharp. All of this comes from this power of the growth that's in the earth, and that is all according with the measurement and the different mixtures and the fusing of kindness and severity, or severity and kindness, etc. And if so, we have to understand, why then do we have to put a seed into the ground? Because if it's all coming from the power of growth in the ground, what do you need the seed for? But the idea of the seed is the idea of Allah's man. This is the ascent of feminine water. Basically, it is something that is arousal from below, to this power of this growth, which is the spiritual power, and it's not able naturally to lower itself and to contract itself and to enclose itself within physical things, only if there's a certain vessel, and then it could reside and it get revealed the power of the growth, and it could grow like the seed, specifically like the seed that was planted. And we see clearly that according to the seed that's planted in the earth, that's what will grow, and that will be born from the ground. And now we understand the idea of mitzvahs, that they're compared to fruit, because it says Or zaru al tzaddik, there's light that is planted, seeded for the tzaddik, which means that the light of the Ein Sof, the light of Hashem, gets drawn down and gets emanated from Hashem, may be blessed, is called planting. And that is why, because in truth, in comparison to the essence of Hashem, he is beyond any type of attributes whatsoever. And even the level of Chachma, which is a level of simple material action of Asiyah, in comparison to him, as it's known, what it says in Eitz Chaim on the verse of the Zohar, that kad solik barusa lemivri alma, then it came into his desire to create the world. And what does it mean kisolik barusa? It ascended in his desire, meaning that there was a ascension, there was a certain contraction within his own self and his essence to be able to bring about the emanation of the 10 spheres of Atzilus, which is the concept of light being enclosed within vessels. And that is at length what's explained and mentioned in Eitz Chaim, the whole idea of kav, chut, and cholol, which means the new light that comes into the world after the contraction of the light and the empty space that was there before, that these are all many, many contractions, and unbelievably strong contractions, that they'll be able to be created the level of Atzilus. And this is at the beginning of the creation of the world, which then it was Olam Chesed Yibana. God does it through kindness, because there's nothing arousing it. He's doing it just for the sake of the future of what will be. In other words, a kindness without return. But now everything is dependent on the actions of those who are down here. As it's known, the whole idea of the evolved worlds, especially to draw down a new light, that you have to have a ascension of feminine waters, meaning arousal from below, a svistalasata. And that is the idea of the light that is planted for the tzaddik, as we mentioned before, which that is the actual fulfillment of mitzvahs, in actual fulfillment, specifically. That through that, we're able to draw down and be revealed the light of the Ein Sof in a way that it should be in a vessel, that it could be understood and grasped until we could actually able to have pleasure from the light of the Shekhinah, from the ray of the Shekhinah in Gan Eden, each one according to his level and his avodah, his work and service and fulfillment of Torah and mitzvahs that he did in this physical world. And in the footnote here, he says, look in different places about this mashal. Then he says, and this is what we see similar in the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer, that the Jewish people were commanded the day after Pesach, which the idea of Pesach, as we said on the first night of Pesach, was the jump, as we mentioned before, from the essence of the essence of Hashem, the essence of the emanator, and it went to where, as we said before, to Malchus, to the level of the door, which is level of Malchus Datzilis, and so from here and further is the drawing down of this light. It comes down through the action of mitzvahs, and that's the idea of the counting of the Omer that we say each day. Hayom Yom Aleph, today is the first day of the Omer, second day of the Omer, etc. Which, what is the idea of Yom, day? So Yom, he says the gematria of the words Kel Havaya, Kel and Yud Kei Vavke, which this refers to the kindness of Hashem. In other words, the drawing down of godly light into the world, which is hidden to the idea of drawing down the light from the level of Ein Sof to where? To the level of Malchus, which is called, in other words, Hayom Rishon or Echad La Omer. Where are we bringing this light to? The Omer, which the Omer refers to the level of Malchus. Why? Because there are many, many levels. There's a level of Malchus, the way it is in Atzilus, which then it's called the level of man, and it says that on the look of their face, the vision of their face is like the face of man, and on the vision or on the throne, there's a Demus Adam. The bottom line is that we're talking about here that when it talks about the chariot of Hashem in the vision of Yecheskel, so then it says that on the throne there's something that's similar to man. Looks the Demus of Adam. So, and then when it comes down and encloses itself in the world of Bria, the level of Malchus, then it's called the level of an animal. As it says, Bahama, that you give growth, you give straw, you grow straw for the animal. What's the animal? The animal's Malchus as it comes down into the world. We had this in the Aimer earlier, that in Malchus itself there's two levels. There's a level where it is in Atzilus, and then there's the way it comes down into the world of Bria. He said, Bahemis Bahari Aleph. And so this is the lower level that there is in Malchus, which is the Malchus of Malchus that goes and it gets hidden into Bria Yitzir Nasiya, and it's 17 Teref Levesa, that she brings Teref means food to her home, which Teref is the same gematria as Ramach, through the fulfillment of 248 mitzvahs, but the word Teref is from the word of ripping apart. It comes through fighting, as we mentioned before, a Milchama. There's a war to separate the good from the bad, as it is in the world of Biyah. And so this is what we have during the beginning of Sfiras HaOmer, is the Karban, is the sacrifice, the bringing of the Omer sacrifice. And that comes specifically from barley, which is the food of an animal, which just is the same thing, just as a person through wheat, through food, it gets strengthened and spreads the power of life throughout his limbs. The same way also is this sacrifice of the barley is a food for an animal, which is the idea of Sa'ira Shir Hay, which is the hay refers to Malchus here, that there's or Sa'ar Hay. In other words, that in order to get to the level of hay, that there be to be able to get that the level of Malchus to come down to give life to the creations which are limited and have a set term to their existence. For this has to be drawn down a light from above, and that is through the sacrifice they brought on the Mizbeach, which comes from the desire and the wisdom of Hashem specifically, as it says in Torah that you should bring one complete sheep. And what is its its flour sacrifice is two esrainim dafka. So we have two esrainim, which Isarin is the same word as Sa'ar, but there's two esrainim, two measurements of flour. He says all other sacrifices, it says only one measurement of flour, 1/10 of flour for a sheep. And then when the libation of the wine and the libation of the oil is a quarter of a hin. and even, which is a measurement in the Beis Hamikdash, and even the oil that's mixed with this flour is also only a quarter of a hin. So the point is that even if you have more flour, you should have then more oil. So we see, no, the oil doesn't get doubled, but the actual flour does get boiled. All right? So this is a special thing here, that the barley, which is for the animal, gets doubled. Okay, so now the Tzemach Tzedek, I think, is in this paragraph, in this footnote, is now going to explain different explanations for this. So the first idea of what does it mean that it's a flour like sacrifice is double. So it's almost like what it says, that when there's no drop that falls from above, which doesn't have two drops that go up towards it. So if you drop a drop into a water, two drops will jump up. And that's why, because the העומר, the main thing is the ascension of the name Ban, which is the ascending from this world. So therefore you need two to ascend to be able to draw down one. Another explanation, he says, it's what it says by tzedakah, that the regular level of giving tzedakah is to give a tenth, meiser, and the tenth, as it says, a tenth should be holy, but it's a mitzvah, the special mitzvah, to give a fifth, which is 20%, which is because the beginning is in the end, and the end is in the beginning, as it says, aser asrenu lach, a double term of giving a tithing, which this is 2 times, which is that there's a meiser, the tenth that comes from below, ascending to above, and then it's from above to below. And the same way it's also here, because the Omer is a level of malchus, and the malchus is from above to below, it's a tenth. But also from below to above, it's a level of keser, which is also a tenth going up. And it says, show me your vision, which this is through this separation that separates at the end of Atzilus, and the light breaks through, and then it becomes a returning light. And it goes the other way, it becomes keser to the lower world, and it becomes keser even to the higher worlds. In other words, it shines back. Therefore, the idea of Omer, which is the ascension of this level of name of Ban, which is a level of reflecting light. Therefore, the sheep that comes with the Omer has 2 esrainim of flour, which is a level of malchus and a level of keser, from above to below, and from below to above as one. That's the second explanation, why double flour. Another explanation is according to what it says in the Zohar, Pashas Chayesara, that the name of Ban is called Machpelah, as we know the cave of Machpelah, and the idea there is that we find that it is double, that there's a hay, and the hay has a milui hay. When you spell out hay, you add another hay, it becomes double hay, and so therefore that's the same way here. You have a double of Israel, of the Silas. Anyway, so he says, according to that, now through this, which we brought a sacrifice on the Mizbeach according to its law and according to its exact dimensions, as through a kohen who knew all these kavanas, he knew all these contemplations or all these meanings, and he was able to have in mind those meanings. So then through it dwelled, and it got revealed within it the fire from above on the altar, and that's the drawing down of the settling, the hashra, the divine presence dwelling of the Ein Saf in the level of malchus through the doing of the physical mitzvahs. And the same thing also happens in other mitzvahs like tzitzis and tefillin, which they're also the same way as putting a seed in the ground, that it gets swallowed and it decomposes in the earth, and through that it draws down and it gets revealed the power of growth in a vessel, which is level of malchus. And that's the idea of counting that 49 days, that we draw down the godliness to the level of malchus in these 49 days until Shavuos, which that's the level of keser, of the crown, that they become equal again, that the moon, so to speak, and the sun become equal, shavim b'kaimasam, which is the idea of the malchus ascending, and then it comes back to the level of Adam, the level of man. As we said before, there's 2 levels of malchus, and in Shavuos they would bring actually 2 breads, which would come from wheat, not from barley, which wheat is the food of man. And as we say, chita is also, the numerical value is 22, which is the 22 letters of the Torah, which therefore then is the time of the giving of the Torah. And the reason for this is that through the fulfillment of mitzvahs, you could draw down and you could reveal the level, and then this great light from above. Because the fulfillment of mitzvahs, they happen from physical things specifically, like the sacrifices from sheep and from goats, and the same thing, the tzitzis and from wool, and the tefillin are from parchment, which are physical, and their sources from the level of the 288 sparks that come from the world of Toyu. As we know, these are the kings that preceded the kings in Israel. In other words, that they are something greater and stronger, and through fulfillment of mitzvahs, it gets ascended and it gets refined. This good that's in this lower world that had broken and become concealed from Toyu, and it goes back to its source in the level of Ban, as it is in Sag, which it means in the way it is in Bina. which is higher than the name of Ma, which is only in Za. And this is that, and the Ma is what refines the name of Ban. And this is the idea of the whole Torah, as it says that Moshe spoke. And this is the idea of the entire Torah, as it says Hashem speaks to Moshe to say. That means he says it again. That in other words, Moshe is the level of wisdom, the level of Ma, which is the revelation of the light of Ein Sof as it is in Chachma, and he has to tell it to Bnei Yisrael to draw it down into the lower worlds, which they have the level of Netzach and Hoid, which is the whole idea of the evolved worlds and drawing things from above to below. And ultimately, as we said, that we then, through mitzvahs, we're able to make a vessel to draw it down. He says, Gimel, therefore, this is why the 248 mitzvahs are called 248 limbs of the king. So, for example, just like life that spreads and gets enclosed in every single limb and limb of a person, according to its limb and according to its right balance. It's through blood, because the blood is the soul, and that is the natural warmness that there is, as it's known, that the main life of the soul is through the natural warmness and heat and the hot blood. On the other hand, if one chas v'shalom goes the other way, which is becomes cold, then the life force of the body ascends from him and etc. And it's not healthy. The same way also an idea of mitzvah is that their source is from the crown, which is 620 pillars of light, and just like a pillar, through it you could draw things from above to below and from below to above. The same way through the mitzvahs, we draw the light of the Ein Sof to get enclosed within the vessels, which is things of the world and the limbs of the person, which their main drawing down is through the level of gvura, severity, specifically. He says not din, not judgmental, chas v'shalom, not to be too severe, not the level of din, but the opposite. That the main spreading and life force and its source comes from the 5 gvuras, the 5 severities of Atik, of the world of Atik, which is called Putsina de Kardunisa, the hammer of light, which is higher even than the level of kindness. In other words, it's not even a severity that's severe. It's actually just something that's splitting things up in the proper way, that everything gets it in its perfect way. Meaning, when you give something to somebody in his perfect way, you're doing him a kindness. You're not being severe at all. You're actually being very kind. The fact that you're dividing up your thoughts or whatever it is to give it in the proper way, the measurement for the one you're giving it to, is only kindness. There's no severity there whatsoever. But that specifically through that contraction, that because when he says from the level of kindness, all you would have is a level of makif. In other words, only a ethereal and more surrounding, not a thing that's not permeating. And it says that you're right, that the right of Hashem, it embraces me, which is only from the backside. And even though that because of this there's a great strength in the level of kindness, that they could go and spread to a place that's very low, like Avram that came out of him, Yishmael, but yet it's only in a way that's makif. It doesn't actually affect you, not a pnimi, as you have when you do it in a way of gvura, of severity, which then it is within and it permeates, like you have the life force in a limb. As we said, it comes from the warmth, and therefore the mitzvahs are called fruit, which is like food, which is an inner power, which is the main life force of the body, because without having food, a person, even if you'll wear many garments, you won't survive. Except if you eat, then your powers will be strengthened of your body. And look in these sources and all the mitzvahs. Okay, so that's number one. We see that mitzvahs are called, they're like a food. But then he said, that's why it's called the limbs of the king. The mitzvahs are also called garments, as it's known from the statement of the Zohar by Avram Avinu, that it says Avram was old, coming in his days, and we say the coming in his days that he had all the garments, which are also level of makif, that which surrounds and is more ethereal and more and not within us. He says, because in truth, the neshama itself is not able to receive and have and get, that it should have a pleasure from the light and the ray of godliness that's in Gan Eden, in the supernal Gan Eden, without having a garment, which is the garments of mitzvahs, because it wouldn't be able to appreciate it, wouldn't be able to handle it. And that's where it says, Ugvois b'tzedakah. So we see the word mountain is connected with the word of tzedakah, which goes on the action of all mitzvahs. Because in general, all the mitzvahs are called tzedakah, as explained in Tanya, and the person who fulfills them is called with the name tzaddik, which he's the one doing tzedakah. And for example, you have the action of tzedakah in the physical world, which you give a penny, you give a pruta to a poor person. What does he give him? Life. The same way also fulfillment of mitzvahs. All the mitzvahs are called with the name tzedakah, because he is the tzaddik and she is tzedakah, which is a level of malchus, which is called tzedakah, which is the source of severity, which then it is called, that just as its own, it's called tzedek, righteousness. But through tzedakah, that you actually do it, then you draw down the hay as well, and it's called tzedakah. And that's the idea, he says now, that he jumps over the mountains, which is only the forefathers, and jumping is only with 1 foot. On the other hand, leaping is with 2 feet, and it's over the gvois, it's over these peaks, that the leaping is with 2 feet as one, which is the level of left, which pushes away, and the level of right, which brings close. And as we said before, the level of mitzvahs has 2 levels. There are inner levels, that like food, and also their surrounding levels, like garments. And this inner level is the level of pushing away with the left, which is the level of gvura, that the way you give the sustenance should only be in accordance with the one who's receiving. On the other hand, the level of kindness, which is a source of all the surrounding lights, they descend from a great place to a very low place, and therefore he says the matriarchs were compared to the level of mitzvahs, as it says before, the peaks in stucco, that they were really higher than the forefathers, and therefore they were barren, because their souls came from a masculine level. But now, that's the level of ma, as we said before, in the level of za, that refines the level of ban. But after the refinement, then there'll be Eshes Chayla Teres Baila, that the wife of valor, the woman of valor, will be a crown to her husband, which is that then the level of ban, which is machos. So this will ascend to the level of sag, which is the level of bina, and that is to the level of b'chol with all your might, which is totally unlimited. On the other hand, the level of b'chol nafshecha, with just your soul, which means you've got good inclination and evil inclination. So they are still a vessel, but the level of ma'od is higher than any level of vessels, and that comes through forcing oneself, iskafia, from the level of severity, specifically, as it's known, the greatness of about tshuva, which is with greater strength, and that happens through the level of b'chol meidecha and the ascending from this world, doing mitzvahs in the physical world. Okay, so now he says, look in the footnote, he says, look now in the Mimer Vela Mishpatim, where he speaks about that I will seed, in other words, I'll plant the Jewish people. And it says there in the Pasuk, the seed of man, the seed of an animal. Which man, that is the knowledge, the level of connection with God, which there is in the neshamas, in the souls of Atzilus, which are totally one with God. And then there's a level of Behema Ban, which is the level of the neshamas as they are in the world of Bariah, which they are, so to speak, independent individuals. But they also dedicate their entire lives to Hashem. They have their own das and connection to Hashem. So Moshe, he's the one who draws down the level of connection with Hashem, of das, also into the Bariah, to give, as it says in the Pasuk, that I give grass in your fields to your animals. And because he is from the level of the higher das, and so he could draw it down to the lower levels. And basically what he's saying is that these levels that there are in Atzilus, ultimately, through the tzedakah, etc., we draw it down into the lower levels as we are in the physical world, in this lower world, and here we do physical mitzvahs. He says that this one understand also to what we explained before in the idea of the malchus ascending from the level of what's called behema to the level of man, which happens now the other way. That happens through Moshe Rabbeinu. It happens through, in other words, and when does this happen? On Shavuos, from the giving of the Torah, because the Torah is the highest level of das, and this gets drawn down into this same knowledge, into the Knesset. So we could have the same connection down here, and through our physical mitzvahs, we could bring the malchus to ascend, and therefore make this seed that could draw down the greatest of light. And so, according to what I explained in another place about Shalach, the Ma'achal and the idea of this of the flour sacrifice, that the flour is the drawing down of knowledge, and then oil and wine is chachma and bina. So according to this sheep that comes with the Omer, this sacrifice we mentioned before, which is the Sfirat Omer sacrifice for the first day of the Omer, which its flour was double, as we said, 2 esrainim of flour. So we could say this is the idea of drawing down from a higher level of das than the regular das is drawn down. And so we can explain this, so according to what we said before from the Maimer Vela Mishpatim, that in order to draw down das, also from the level of animal, that means in Biyad, has to be the source of where you draw from, has to be even higher than Atzilus. And that's what it says, Kikel Deus Hashem, that there's 2 levels of knowledge of God, which includes both levels of Das, as explained in the Maimer Moshe Yadaber, which from there specifically we draw down the power from the higher level of Das, that we could actually bring down the revelation also all the way down. And that's the idea of these 2 esrainim of flour, to give a hint to this higher level of das and the lower level of das. And even though the das that is spread to fulfill to keep the midas in existence, and their life force is called the lower level of das, but that to be able to go down into the worlds of Bariah, Yitzir, and Asiya, for there you have to have from a higher source, from the das Elyon. And even though that this level that comes from this that comes from the level of animal, that it should be able to go up to the level of Adam is only on Shavuos. So why are we bringing the sacrifice of 2 esrainim, of 2 flour measures, already at the beginning of Sfiras Omer. He said because even in the sacrifice of the Omer and the counting of the Omer, you have to have the preparation to draw down this das, because it's to transform your attributes of your nefesh bahamis and your characteristics, and that's also through the level of this higher level of das, and therefore you need it from the beginning. Another explanation is of the two esrainim of Silas. You could look in what it says in Pietz Chaim in the Shar Sfiras Omer that this what's called from das is doubled. It has an orpnimi and a level of makif. As we said before, the mitzvahs have orpnimi or makif, and you want to affect both, and therefore the soilus has to be in both ways to transform the nefesh bahamis from within and from outside. And with that, we finished the beer, and then we'll do the next mimer, the Yenasi B'chagve. Let's try that again. Yenasi B'chagve Asel of Sesar Madrega, that dove that is in the clefts of the stone, of the rocks, in the hidden level, in the hidden places. That means it's hiding. Show me harini es mar'ayich. Show me your face. So this pasuk is written on the time there's no base standing. The Jewish people, the soul of the Jewish people, is in exile. Then it's in a hidden level, as it says in Shir from Hashirim Lili. And at the time of the exodus of Egypt, it says that the fall has gone and the rain time has passed, and the figs are starting to blossom. So get up, my beloved, my beautiful, and come away. So it says, explain this in Shir, brought down in Shir Pershashi. The explanation of this is that the idea of my beloved and my beautiful, this is through Torah mitzvahs. The Torah, the way it is bread and a food for the soul. The same way through Torah, the Jewish people, they bring sustenance to the Father in heaven, and through that they're called, the Jewish people themselves are called my beloved and from the mitzvahs, we make also garments to the soul in Gan Eden, and through that, same way also through them, we are called beautiful. In other words, through the actual level of Torah, we become rayasi. And from the mitzvahs that make a garment, we're called yafti, or beautiful. That we make a garment, which is the garment for the King of all kings, the Eibishter. And to understand this well, we know that not the entire soul comes down into the body of a person. Because even an angel is only standing in a third of the world, and the Shama, which is even greater than that, for sure cannot come down within the world. So how is it possible to come down into the body of a human down here, which is too small to hold the soul? Only a little amount of the light, a ray of the soul, is what comes down and closes itself in the body, and the entire soul is above in a level of makif, in a level of a surrounding light that is from above. And in the writing of the rabbis, this is called the term mazel, which I said, even though he doesn't see, the mazel sees, and the meaning here is not on the mazel itself, because we say there's no mazel for the Jewish people. I mean, it's not a star constellation. Rather, what we're speaking about is in a shama, as it is above, which is not enclosed within the body, and it's called the mazel from the term of yizal mayim midolyav, which is their boughs, they drip with moisture, so water drips. The noizlim Lebanon, it says it drips from Lebanon, which that is something that drips, and like it gives a drips of sustenance and light from above into the shama as it's in the body, to connect it and to tie it to the body. And this is why we say, Elikaina shama shenasata be God, the soul that you placed in me tahira, it is pure. You created it. So it should have been the other way around. You should have said create. You created it. Then it's pure, because before it was created, you can't call it pure. Only the idea here is that there's a level of tahira, of purity in the soul. It goes in the part of the soul that's higher than the body, in a level of makif that's not in a way of creation. Only that which you created and that which you formed is an evolved level from this original purity of the soul, only to be able to come down into the body, because the creation is something from nothing. That means it's created into something, that it should be an actual ego and something that could be measured, etc., in this soul, and it could be independent, so to speak, in this division of intellect and attributes of midas, of character and emotions and all the other powers of the soul, is only when it's able to come into these evolved levels of worlds that it could come out into the body. But higher than this, it's a level of ayin. It is a level, so to speak, of nothing. As it says, before the world was created, it was only you and your name itself. That means it was you himself, meaning Hashem, the only and totally unified. The same with the soul is in a way of unification, higher in its emanation, an emanator. And there it's a level of tahira, that's the level where it's pure. And he says, look in a few places here with regard to word of tahiru. And on this level of the neshama, it says that the world was created beracious, and the world was created beracious in the beginning for the Jewish people who were called the first. And the Torah doesn't tell you that this is about the Jewish people, because in the Jewish people there's two levels. Because there's two levels. The first level is a part of the soul that's within the body of the person. On this it says in the Zohar that there's three knots that connect the Jewish people with Torah, and the Torah connects with the Eibishter. In other words, that the Jewish people are at the lowest level, lower than Torah, and then there's a higher, the Hashem is higher than Torah. But in the second level was the Neshama as it is above, in the level of Makif. In this surrounding higher way. On this it says the Jewish people are called the first, and they came up in the thought of God, that it says the holy Yisrael are holy to Hashem, the beginning, the first of his produce, that the Jewish people are called the beginning. And this the source of Torah, because in the entire Torah it says, speak to the Jewish people, command the Jewish people. That means the entire Torah is only built and founded on the level of the Jewish people. So it comes out that this level of the Jewish people, which comes up in the mind of God, is the source and the foundation of Torah. And it says in the Medrash Rabbah in the beginning of Parshas Bereishis that the thought to create the Jewish people came before everything. In other words, even before Torah. And this is what it says, that he established the Torah and the Jewish people, amongst the Jewish people, meaning through Yaakov and Yisrael, that through them and with them, he established the whole Torah, that from them it gets drawn down the level of Torah through them specifically. And look in Zerich Gimel, that in the explanation, everything is dependent on the mazel, and even a Sefer Torah that's in the heichal, in the ark, in the base, in the shul, which one's taken out, is also dependent on the level of mazel. So what does he say? So what does it mean here? He says the level of heichal, a room, goes in the Torah, the oral Torah, which is a vessel to the written Torah. And it all comes from where? From the level of mazel. In other words, the level of the soul of the Jewish people. And as we explained before, the sources of the Jewish people is also from the level of mazla, as it drips from the levanon. And you can look in Pardes also about the idea of mazel, etc., and schus, etc.